friends. Welcome back to the Dyslexia Dialogues. I'm Dr. Sherri Rochel, but more importantly, I am a mom who's right there in the trenches with you. In episode 0, I shared Lucas's story. Today, I want to step back and really dig into the who's, the what's, and the whys of dyslexia. We're going to look at the history, bust a few myths, talk about how many people are impacted, walk through common signs at different ages, and share supports that actually help dyslexic learners thrive. By the end of this episode, you'll understand dyslexia more clearly, know what to look for, and feel more confident in how to support a child or maybe even yourself. Let's start at the beginning. Dyslexia isn't new. It was first described back in 1881 by a German doctor named Oswald Birken. A few years later, another German doctor, Rudolf Berlin, gave it the name we still use today, dyslexia. The dys part comes from Greek words trouble, and lexia means with words. So in Greek, dyslexia truly means trouble with words. In the early days of this discovery, people thought it was an eyesight issue and that it was even at one point called word blindness. But in 1896, a British doctor named W. Pringle Morgan wrote about a boy named Percy. And Percy was bright, he was articulate, and he was very capable. But reading just didn't come. Sounds real familiar. And that right there, that article, it changed the conversation about what dyslexia was. By the mid-1900s, researchers like Samuel Orton began to prove dyslexia was tied to brain processing, and it wasn't visual or intellectual. It had nothing to do with intelligence. Orton's work laid the foundation for programs that are still used today, such as Orton Gillingham, or OG for those who are in the trenches and know that lingo. Fast forward to today, we know that dyslexia is the most common learning difference, and it affects about 1 in 5 people worldwide. That means if you are in a classroom of 25 students, at least 5 of them may have dyslexia, or statistically should have dyslexia. So what exactly is dyslexia and what does it mean? Well, dyslexia is a neurological difference that makes it hard for learners to connect letters and sounds, decode words, and read fluently. It is not a lack of intelligence. In fact, many people with dyslexia have average to above average IQs. And it's also not rare. Like I said, 1 in 5 people worldwide have it. And according to the Yale Center for Dyslexia and Creativity, dyslexia makes up 80 to 90% of all learning differences. 80 to 90% come from dyslexia. What that means is it's everywhere. It's in every classroom, it's in every community, and it's in every walk of life. So let's pause for a minute to talk about some of the big myths that are out there in regards to dyslexia. What is dyslexia? What isn't dyslexia? Dyslexia is not laziness. Kids with dyslexia, they often work twice as hard just to keep up because it takes that amount of work for them to be able to follow along. It's not a vision problem. Now, we can have a vision problem and be dyslexic, but glasses will not fix the blur of the letters on the screen or the ability for that learner to process. It's not something you grow out of. It really is. It's a lifelong condition that these learners will live with and need to learn to adapt to. And it's absolutely, like I said, not about intelligence. Some of the most famous people or most intelligent people in modern society have been dyslexic. People like Albert Einstein, Steven Spielberg, Octavia Spencer, Richard Branson, a very popular children's author, Dave. Dav. He's the I can't think right now. It'll come to me. Comic author, graphic novel author. I'm sure most of you know who he is. He is also dyslexic, and his story has been an inspiration to generations or students in this generation for a while now. So let's talk practically. about what dyslexia is and what it looks like. Now, this is one of those things that not everybody has every sign, not everything pops. And sometimes they'll have these signs and it's not that dyslexia. But here are some common ones by age. In early childhood, so think preschool to kindergarten or even before, children will show a delayed speech pattern or a mixing up of words. I talked about this with Lucas's story last week. We were doing on instead of off. And one thing I didn't mention is we had him tested multiple times actually for hearing loss because he did not want to speak and his speech was never really clear. He still to this day goes through a speech program at school, but that is where it all started. Trouble with learning nursery rhymes or recognizing rhyming words. Again, another common sign in dyslexic learners that their brain is just working a little bit different than ours. And finally, one of the biggest ones that we see is the ability or the inability to understand letter names. They will struggle with letter names. They will struggle or can struggle with letter sounds. And what we, stereotypically think about is the dyslexic learner likes to write their letters backwards because they see it differently. Moving into school age children, they will face a difficulty in reading fluently and sounding out just the simplest of words. We call it decoding in the academic world. Decoding is hard for students who are dyslexic. They will avoid reading. They may cry or get frustrated with doing homework because it is too much to ask of their brain. They trouble with spelling, sequencing, or following multi-step directions. As I was going through the script for this today, I was reading it to Lucas because he's my assigner offer on everything dyslexic. And he said, it came to a point where the one line said, spelling might be like climbing a mountain for a dyslexic learner. And he just nodded along and said, yeah, that's how it feels, Mom. It's like climbing a mountain. Another sign that we see with dyslexic learners is that they might fall behind their peers in reading. Even when they are bright and when they are curious, they might have a love for learning and they still struggle to read. It is not because they can't do it, it's because they aren't learning the way their brain works. Finally, now adolescents and adults, if you haven't been diagnosed with dyslexia at this point, there are still some signs that you can watch for that might indicate you have a means for concern. Slow reading speed compared to your peers. Maybe you read a little bit slower than others. Maybe you avoid reading out loud, or you struggle with spelling or organizing your written work, or even memorization. You could have strong verbal skills, but weaker written expression. Those are all signs in adolescents and adults that they might have a dyslexia diagnosis. And if you are nodding along to this list, either for your kid, your learner, your students, or even yourself, remember 1 in 5 people have dyslexia. So you're not alone. So we've talked about the struggles. Let's talk about what helps. There isn't a magic solution. As I said, dyslexia is not something that goes away because you blink your eye or you got diagnosed. You can't take a magic pill and have dyslexia disappear. But there are proven strategies out there that help to make it easier. There are structured literacy programs that have been dedicated and developed strictly to help dyslexic learners. Some of them I mentioned earlier, Orton Gillingham, the OG. There's Wilson, there's Barton. These programs rely upon multi-sensory, explicit step-by-step approaches. The dyslexic brain needs to involve all senses to allow it to really form those literacy skills. Implementing accommodations as you can get them at school or in the academic setting is very beneficial for the learner. Extra time on test, using audiobooks, taking oral testing, access to technology like text to speech. Like we said just a minute ago, we see a lot of dyslexic students having high verbal skills, but lower written skills. So if we can put these examinations or any sort of assessment into the manner that their brain works, we will actually get a true sense of what they are capable and aren't capable of. As a case, stepping into my academic role and less of my mom role, one of my biggest concerns in working with academic standardized testing or any testing with a dyslexic learner is, are we getting a true sense of what they are capable of? In being Lucas's mom, and this being third grade here in South Dakota, he will start his state testing this year. And my concern is, I know how intelligent this little boy is, but are we going to get a true picture of how intelligent he is? Because it takes him longer to pull things out of his brain, right? Like, he knows all of these facts, but they are not indexed the same way we are. So it takes him a little bit longer to find the right note card and pull it out and understand what he's talking about. He also can't read at the same proficient rate that others can, because it's just not who Lucas is. In his 504 plan and IEP, we have it set up so that he is given extra time to take that test. He's given the audio option for that test. Those are the things that we can do as parents, as advocates, to really push and hope for our kids to be successful. The use of the 504 plan, the use of the IEP, we talked about that a little bit last week in Lucas's story, how we didn't qualify for an IEP under our dyslexia, but we do have a 504 plan. Remember, those are just formal supports that the school has to give you that you can use to help level that playing field. At home, take time to read together every day. Help them build that confidence. Help them build their stamina and their ability to sound out and understand what words are. The more we expose them to it, the easier it becomes in the long run. Don't practice in long intervals. Your dyslexic learner isn't meant to read a 50-page chapter book in one sitting. Their brain is not going to tolerate that. So make it short, break it into a chapter here, a chapter there. Maybe it's a chapter while I'm grounding the hamburger for spaghetti, and then it's a chapter before bed. Those short little bursts keep them engaged, keep them excited about it, and help build that confidence, because, hey, I could do it last time, I can do it this time. The key to supporting a dyslexic learner, or even facing dyslexia yourself, is consistency, encouragement, and teaching in a way that works best with the way your brain works. Work with the dyslexic brain instead of against it. So why does this all matter? Well, without early recognition and support, it is proven that kids with dyslexia can start believing they're dumb, which then leads to this lower self-confidence. And once that lower self-confidence kicks in, it's so hard to get them back up, and it will affect them lifelong. But have no fear, early intervention will help. And ongoing support. This isn't as I mentioned before, it's not a once in a lifetime thing. This is an ongoing, all day, every day. You will always have your brain work this way type of thing. But there's no reason to not have hope, because the dyslexic brain is so incredible. People with dyslexia have been proven to become some of the best problem solvers, some of the most successful entrepreneurs and artists, scientists, and leaders. The dyslexic brain has the ability to change the world because those learners and thinkers see things differently. So today we covered the history of dyslexia. We talked about what dyslexia is and what it isn't, how many people are affected. Remember, that's 1 in 5, and that 80 to 90% of learning differences are dyslexic. We talked about what the signs to look for are at different stages of life and the supports that can make all the difference. Remember, like I said, dyslexia is common, it's real, and it's not a weakness. It's a different way of processing language. and different does not mean less. If you found this episode helpful, please follow or subscribe to the Dyslexia Dialogues on your podcast app. That way, new episodes will show up for you automatically every week. And if you know another parent, teacher, or student who needs this, share this episode with them. The more we spread awareness, the more we can build a community that supports our kids and changes the way schools respond to dyslexia. If you are interested in sharing your story, please reach out. As an educator, my goal is to find enough people to share their stories and their strategies that we can really make a lasting difference in education for years and years and generations to come. So please reach out if you're willing to do that and share your story with us. Thank you for spending your time with me today. I'll see you next week with our first parent story. We'll give you some insights and hopefully